The 76ers took a huge swing this offseason, and it just might pay off for them. Welcome in or welcome back. Today we're talking about the 76ers, and while, again, you may know I am a Celtics fan and I should have this fervent hate for the 76ers, I again appreciate who they are as a team and as an organization and what they've done for a rivalry with the Boston Celtics. And because I am a basketball fan and not just a Celtics fan, I can look at something that a team has done in the offseason and be very objective about whether that was good or that was bad. And the 76ers, even outside of the Paul George acquisition, had a very, very good offseason. Obviously, this team begins and ends with Joel Embiid, and then adding on top of the already great season that Tyrese Maxey just had and bringing in Paul George already makes this team look very scary, but their depth chart is even scarier. Bringing in Caleb Martin to be this spark plug, this glue guy for you in this starting offense is so valuable. I mean, I don't have to tell you what he did in Miami. I don't have to tell you what he did against my Boston Celtics. The dude is an absolute hooper, and it doesn't stop there. I know that Kyle Lowry had a really rough season last year, but I think that bringing him back and having that continuity in a backup point guard role is going to be super valuable for them. Eric Gordon is not the same Eric Gordon of old, but he is still a great veteran presence. He can still shoot the cover off of the ball, and he's going to be a great scoring punch for this bench unit. Kelly Oubre, moving him from that starting role to the bench role behind Paul George now, does raise some questions for me. I don't know if he will have the same kind of punch that he did last year, but he had a great year last year. There were multiple times, especially when Joel was on his streak of looking like he was going to go back-to-back for MVP, where Kelly Oubre looked like the better player on the night, and hopefully he can bring that same kind of energy into this bench role. Reportedly, Joel Embiid called up Andre Drummond and said, "Hey dog, we need you," and brought him over. Again, not the same kind of player that he was a couple years ago, but still an elite rebounder and something that you desperately need on this team. More Celtics bias this time, picking up Guerschon Yabusele after his great Olympic run last year and what he was able to do for that French team is going to be super valuable. When he was in Boston, he was more or less this stand in the corner, shoot if you're open kind of guy. And if you did give him the keys, if there were nights where the Celtics were up or down by 30 and you're just trying to see what these other roster members can do, he was very much in the slate of, let me show you what I can do, and not being able to produce anything. He was more of the shoot 15-foot contested mid-ranges and live with the results, and he is a different kind of player now. This kind of player is more mature, and he's more seasoned, and more importantly now, he's going to understand his role in this offense and just being a very good, valuable additional piece to the main ingredients that they have going on. And that's a 10-man lineup, and you might be thinking to yourself, wow, that's pretty good. They have 3 other pieces on their bench that I think that at bare minimum is going to eat innings throughout the year. That way Paul George and Joel Embiid can stay healthy in the playoffs. Just going off of ESPN's depth chart, Reggie Jackson, known bucket getter, known hooper, Reggie Jackson is the 3rd string point guard for them. And that's not to mention the fact that you picked up Jared McCain, who I know is currently banged up. He had a real hard fall. Everyone seems to think that he'll be okay to go for opening night. We'll just have to see. But he is going to be a very reliable piece on this team. There are going to be nights where Paul George and Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid don't have it going, and you're going to need to rely on your bench unit to get the spark going. Jared McCain can be that. He shot the cover off the ball at Duke last year, and I don't see any reason why he wouldn't continue to do that this year. And lastly, someone who I don't think is going to get a ton of extended minutes, KJ Martin. We're just 2 years removed away from him having a breakout year in Houston, averaging about 13 points a game. So there's a real, again, possibility where you're going to have somebody eat up innings throughout the regular season, and he could probably average 15 if you give him the opportunity. Of course, I hate to talk about the elephant in the room, but with Joel's recent comments about the fact that he's never going to play back-to-back games ever again, and Paul George hyperextending his knee, the very first and top concern for this team right now and going forward through the rest of the season is how healthy will this team be? I do want to have a quick aside here. A lot of people, for some reason, viewed the quote that said, "I'm not going to play back-to-backs anymore," to mean he's only going to play a maximum of 41 games in a year. Don't be dumb. Don't look into it that way. For some reason, even though the NBA season is so long, there are still mandatory back-to-back games on back-to-back days for some reason. I'm not really sure why we continue to have those things. Again, with all the injury concerns throughout the league, I would have to imagine that as a business, you would want to protect your stars, and running your stars into the ground is never a good idea. So I'm not sure why we even have back-to-backs, but I'm not necessarily concerned with Joel or even a coaching staff or a training staff coming out and saying that, yeah, our MVP candidate, the person who was probably going to win MVP last year prior to his injury, we're going to be really cautious with him and not allow him to play back-to-backs. That makes sense to me. I think for the Sixers team, it's more of a matter of when the injuries happen rather than if the injuries are going to happen. I love Paul George. He's one of my favorite players of all time, and I really have a nice affinity for Joel Embiid. But I think at this stage in both of their careers, it's kind of a given to assume that they're going to miss, at a minimum, 20 to 25 games in a year. And again, what are you going to have left when those two superstars are out? Luckily for the 76ers, you just extended Tyrese Maxey, so he's going to be here for the foreseeable future. And if he continues on this projection of stardom that he showed last year, the 76ers are going to be in really good hands, even if they don't have Paul George and Joel Embiid at their disposal. I think the opportunity that Tyrese Maxey had last year was really valuable, and it will continue to prove valuable to him and this organization. That there was a point where the 76ers were second in the East, and then Joel Embiid went down, and Tyrese was the guy. He was calling all the shots. And even though his production, his statistical numbers were looking very good, the team slid from second to seventh. And it also gave him the opportunity to figure out what does work on a basketball team, how to win basketball games, and more importantly, what does work and what does not work when you are the guy. I think as it stands right now, the 76ers are kind of in this upper echelon of basketball teams in the East. I think that the Celtics and the Knicks are kind of in this S tier, if you will. The Celtics obviously coming off of a championship win, and the Knicks picking up Karl Anthony Towns and within this preseason looking very, very good. But right under them are the Bucks and the 76ers. This may sound weird, not only as a basketball point, but from, again, a Celtics fan. I think that the 76ers probably have the most steady foundation of those top four teams in the East. And given the 76ers history, that sounds very, very odd. But when you look at everything that could possibly happen and the likelihood of it happening, I think that, again, the 76ers have really steady footing. Because if you look at the Celtics, yes, there is this undeniable chemistry, and almost everyone was brought back last year. We are so loaded with talent that we had to waive somewhat of Lonnie Walker's ability, so that kind of proves how good of a roster that the Celtics have. But we are going to miss Kristaps Porzingis for a very big chunk of the year, probably, if I had to assume, not until the middle of January at the earliest. And we can't rely on Al Horford forever. He is not getting any younger. And the only other real option that we have as this player who could theoretically stretch the floor is Xavier Tillman, who I want to point out that I love and I very much appreciate, but I'm not sure if he has the facilities to be able to fill this Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis role. For the Knicks, I'm more so concerned about the fit in the long term. I think when you get to a new team, there are one of two avenues that ensue. Either one, it's kind of clunky, it doesn't work all the way. Think back in the day when LeBron joined Dwayne Wade in Miami and how those two really couldn't get on the same page. They started off 9-8 in their first 17 games, and it wasn't until Dwayne Wade looked at LeBron and said, "You need to be LeBron and I'll figure it out," for that to really start clicking. So it could be very clunky in the beginning, or it could be very, very good. It could be so good, in fact, that it catches everybody off guard. There may be a scenario where that latter portion of what I described is what we're viewing right now, and this could be very much a flash in the pan for New York. We'd have to see how this plays out, but I'm not totally convinced that this is something sustainable. This power of friendship sans Dante DiVincenzo was actually going to work in the long run. And for the Bucks, it's really difficult to describe the scenario they have going on. Giannis is obviously going to be Giannis, but Dame is in this deep depressive state, it seems like, and I've gone on before multiple times saying that I don't think that Doc Rivers is necessarily a good X's and O's coach. And that's not to mention the fact that currently right now, Gary Trent and Chris Middleton are dealing with injury issues. And those are very core members of your team. So I'm not sure how all of that's going to shake out for the Bucks. But with this Sixers team, I think that you guys are so deep that it makes up for the fact that, again, Paul George and Joel Embiid are going to miss many, many games this year. And I think as long as you can gear them up toward the end of the regular season and get them ready for the playoffs, I think that's going to be just even greater value, because not only will they be healthy enough to play, but all of your role players will be ready to go as well because they've knocked off the rust. It would very much shock me if the 76ers were anything less than a 4 seed. I think that their ceiling is probably the 2nd seed, but I could see them easily being the 1st seed as well if Boston doesn't get off to a great start. Am I too high on the 76ers? Let me know down in the comments below. Check my link tree while you're at it. Join my Discord. Be kind. Tell somebody you love them. And I'll see you tomorrow.